Hey guys, what's up? This is Free Nachos, and in this video we're going to be playing two tables of 10 cents, 25 cents, no limit hold'em. So we're moving back to 200 now, and it's quite some time since I played this game. So normally these days I play 5, 10 and 10, 20. Here we will bet the turn now. I'm just going to go for pot sizing. And so these limits are significantly lower. And the reality is people will be making a ton of mistakes in these games, and exploiting those mistakes is what generates win rate. And in this video I'm going to put a lot of emphasis on the mistakes that my opponents are going to be making, and the things that you can do. I will show you the things that you can do to exploit those mistakes. So here, in general, people are not going to be 4-betting enough, so I want to be 3-betting significantly wider. This I will just call. I want to 3-bet wider with a more linear range, so hands like king jack offsuit, jack 9 suited, I would 3-bet more often than not, exploiting the fact that I don't get a 4-bet. Here I am facing a half-pot step. I'm going to fold, and on the left the bigger bet is generally a bit too value heavy, so I want to be overfolding a bit there. When we have a 5-out pair, meaning a pair to the board, and we face a large sizing, we generally just can't fold. So I would be folding indifferent hands there, not hands that are going to be pure defense. Here on the turn, I think I'll just bet small, get some value / protection, and I won't get check raised often enough by the pool, which means that we get to deny equity by our opponent, get value from some random high card hands, and we get to see the river still relatively cheap. And so we don't get punished for betting small there at the same frequency as that we need to get punished. And you can see now, like, we lost from the turn on. Like, he's clearly too strong there, but with his bigger bets, I would be making notes if I was playing this pool. But from the turn on, if we check back here, then we are going to face a large bet on the river. We probably are able to fold then versus this player type, seemingly relatively nitty, but it puts us in a relatively tough situation. Whereas we could just bet small, rarely get check raised, even though we should be getting check raised quite consistently there when we use the small sizing. And we still get to see the river, and we essentially pay 75 cents for a showdown here. Right, so here we 3-bet. I am playing, first the pool, I would be playing a mixed strategy on this flop, and I would overprotect my checking ranges a bit. So I'm just going to check this a bit more often. Although there's some arguments to be made to just bet it, I guess. You could just bet range, pool's not going to check raise you often enough. I think that's actually a very reasonable strategy in these games. Pool's probing slightly too often on the turn there. And here I'm just going to go for a bigger sizing. I will get an overfold. I'm getting an overfold for every sizing on that note, which is another reason to check back a bit more liberally on the flop and delayed c-bet a bit more. And I won't get raised often enough versus every sizing. And when you don't get raised often enough versus every sizing and you get an overfold versus every sizing, what you want to do is just bet the sizing that fits best with your hand. So there's a lot of reasons why you'd want to, why you basically, like you can approach this on two different levels. Level one is, I have a good hand, I'm going to bet big. You'd be making the correct strategic choice here, but for the wrong reasons. You want to be betting big there with a good hand because you're not getting raised often enough. Here I play very badly versus Paul punts. I shouldn't be having much of a c-betting range, although probably I could squeeze in a few bets. Here on the turn, I'm just going to check and protect my checking ranges. I've seen some content from him. Seems like a cool guy. I'm just going to guess that this bet is in general a bit too strong, and that he's going to, generally people at 25 now are going to be too honest with their bet sizes. Yeah. Okay. That's reasonable. I'm wondering not 3-betting often if you want to open significantly wider. Here I get 3-bet by a guy that has been under 3-betting over a very decent sample. Actually not a very decent sample, but over a small sample. He seems to be playing very nearly though, so I think he can probably overfold and just fold this. If I could take back my money, especially seeing this flop, I would. But yeah, I think here versus half pot, having a heart, we can't really fold again. I would probably just overfold here because this player type is going to barrel the turn too often. By this player type, I mean the guy that just has a VPIP of 8. They're just going to have too many good hands here that will barrel turns and rivers too often. And so random gut shots, I think maybe we can even fold versus this player type. This is an interesting spot. What I'm going to do is I'm going to check back and then potentially change my hand to do a bluff on the river. Although there will be a direct overfold on the turn. I think with my hand though I can check back, and if the board is very bricky I could check and sometimes win still. Although probably betting just large here will generate more EV. This is a spot that is very overfolded. So I guess I'll just go for the bet here and cheat a little bit. This is definitely not a bluff in equilibrium, but this gets so massively overfolded that finding bluffs there is just going to be very profitable. And it would be kind of a shame if we check back and we lose versus pocket nines, pocket jacks, stuff like that. That would quite likely quickly fold there. I'm getting a small 3-bet here, which is kind of interesting. I think I'm just going to 4-bet to a relatively normal sizing, maybe even a bit bigger. And here we get again a small 3-bet. Here I'm just going to call. Like the odds that we get are just very good. And then on the left side, I'm just going to range check this low monotone texture. I could check jam, I could check raise, normal size, I could check call. There's a bunch of different options. On the turn here, I think we just block bet with range. On the right side, I am just going to fold here. I think my hand is just a bit too weak, even for small sizing, although it's pretty close to be honest when we have position. I think we just jam river. I don't want to bank on a random 25 NL guy to find enough bluffs versus block sizing. So I just ship it in myself and hope that he has a jack of diamonds, queen of diamonds, maybe king of diamonds. Alright, so here we are c-betting. I think we just want to, I think on this turn we can barrel. There's going to be enough pair plus draw type hands that he might want to call. It is a bit iffy. River is very interesting. I think in equilibrium this might be a check back. How weird that might seem. Because we are blocking calls quite heavily. We basically want a king to call, a weaker king. That's his primary calling range. Kind of wonder if I want to check back here despite. I think I can go half pot and then fold versus jams. I think that's probably reasonable. I think it will overfold us. So this is a bit greedy on my end. 10-5 again. I'm going to cold call versus min. It is pretty close to a pure fold in equilibrium, but yeah, still a reasonable call, especially if your opponent is not going to put you to the test. And then, again, it doesn't seem like this guy is going to do that. Here on the turn, I'm just going to go ahead and block bet. On the right here, I think I want to lean towards raising too often. No, actually, I'm going to call. Like it's a close spot. We might be winning a jackpot here, guys. That would be pretty sick. If I win a jackpot at 25 and all, I might just, oh no, I can't actually win one. Like we're not going to, like even if we had a queen, we're not going to win or lose the hand versus, or an ace, yeah, on an ace, I guess, on an ace. So let's pray for the ace and let's pray that he has like, I'm not even sure if that's true, by the way. Here we got a lead here, right? Like we have a bunch of aces that's, you just need to lead, I think. Like he is going to have a bunch of aces as well. Yeah, okay, just call, good luck. Wow, that is insane. Okay, I'm not even sure what to, like on double pair textures you get to lead quite a bit. Like he's going to have a bunch of aces, we are going to have a bunch of aces. So it's not like we have a nut advantage necessarily. But there's going to be a bunch of hands that are going to be barreling the turn that are now counterfeited, like pocket nines maybe. So not that sure, but it feels like a spot where we could have leads. And then versus the pool, like block betting 3 big blinds. Like we're going to get the check back by pocket nines here always, but he's going to call the 3 big blinds. That's usually what happens. Multi-way here, I'm just going to play a passive line as the out of position player. There's not an awful lot of reason to start betting even like a relatively strong hand like this, because they can share the burden of defense between the two of them. And because that is the case, I need to be more selective with my value bets as well. So you need to check basically everything except for maybe pocket jacks and pocket deuces at some frequency. This is an interesting spot. We would have some leads here. I am just going to go ahead and lead. My hand doesn't necessarily want to lead an awful lot. And probably, like in theory, we should have a larger sizing as a lead, but still think that leading is going to be okay here. We get a quick call. We're just going to try to squeeze out another 4 big blinds, I guess. We get like an out of fold pretty much always there, but yeah. Kind of whatever. Like I'm not entirely sure what the line was, but these raises in position are going to perform too well. I just shouldn't have tanked to the last second, which is kind of relatively big tell. If he's somewhat observant, then he's just going to click call here. But these raises in position, they overfold 10 to 15% of the pot. Solvers don't really overfold in those notes, so yeah, good call by him. I'm trying to make that hand indifferent, so yeah. I just noticed it a bit late. Was like stuck thinking what is the line here, but I realized, okay, I'm c-betting flop, check back turn, and then I face a bet on the river. And like I said, then they overfold 10 to 15% of the pot. I can probably raise a bit smaller here. Like I don't need to go 8x. Oh no, wait, this is 6x. No, this is fine. That's just more than fine. If I could go back in time, the only thing that I do differently is I would make sure that I would be raising quicker. We get 3-bet here. I just call my queens, I think. I should probably have a reasonable amount of checks on this texture. Although he's going from the small blind and he's going to have pocket 10s, pocket 9s and 8s himself as well. So it's not too bad, I guess, to see that reasonable, but he's supposed to be relatively careful, I think. He is going to have offsuited ace-queen, offsuited ace-king, just weaker stuff. And I don't have offsuited ace-king, ace-queen for instance. I don't have ace-king at the same frequency as he does, so definitely needs to be a bit careful. Here we just call, we have a gut shot, we have an overpair. And we just call and decide on the river. It is relatively interesting. I think we just fold here. Like on the 4 straight turn, the pool generally under bluffs. Like he could still have bluffs here. I'm not saying that he can't, but most of the more intuitive bluffs are going to contain a queen, because then you can just barrel the turn and you have some equity. So I am just going to fold here. I think it's a reasonable fold. 4 straight turns, always massively under bluffed, so just fold. As played on the river, I kind of like my my block bet. Here I'm just going to go ahead and block bet myself. This is just a fold when he goes and raises 24 big blinds. And I have ace-10 offsuit. And then on the left side here, recreational, tighter recreational, but he's not sitting on a full stack. I have basically a pair here, so I'm not going to fold. It is a bit annoying because he's going to have a ton of pairs, but you just click call and hope we get a check back on the river. Oh wow, he should definitely be value betting that. That's a very big mistake. 6% 3-bet over 800 hands. Not a great sample, but 17, 13 VPIP and PFR is a reasonable sample, 800 hands, so we just fold and move on with life. On the left, I think you can play a bunch of different strategies. I think I prefer mixing because it puts my opponent in more difficult decisions. And this becomes a check raise quite often, I would say. Torn between just going for a small sizing. I think I'll go for a small sizing. And you could call as well, by the way, first half pot. It was fine. You could shove. I think all options are reasonable, as long as you don't fold. Versus 3/4, I think we fold this, especially if he's playing 15 VPIP. And here, I think we shove or check. That's a double flush draw. I think I want to shove here and just get him to fold flush draws. Get him to fold that equity seems reasonable. And sometimes he'll call flush draws, and that would be fine as well. Okay, that's good. Not perfect, but it's good. That was a very pointy hand. Let's see, back here, table composition is quite important, right? So if we are playing on a table where people are at least slightly on the 3-betting, which it seems to be here, we get to open this. Casually flop ace straight. Again, want to look at what my opponent is doing there. On the left side, I'm just going to c-bet my overpair. On the right side, I would go with bet 50 and check. And I think I am going to go ahead and bet. You might need to check this once every blue moon, but just betting it always versus the pool is reasonable, unless you think your opponent is going to go crazy versus your checks, but I don't think that is necessarily the case here. On the left side, we get a check raise. We just call this. He cold calls. He seems to be recreational, so there will be some 9x combos and 6x combos, but there's also going to be pocket 10s, pocket jacks, pocket queens in there. So we just call and pot size bet on the river is gross. He check raises the flop, so it's quite unlikely that he has a 6. He's basically wrapping a 9 here, which, yeah, this is definitely going to be close. I'm going to call because we get reasonable price, but there's going to be some 9x in there. Yeah, like I win the pot here, and I'm sure like now everyone will applaud me for calling there. But I think it's particularly close. I don't think it's particularly close. It is particularly close. The reason is, if you look at the pot size bet there's not an awful lot of value that he can have. He's wrapping relatively thin, yada, yada, yada. But and he's a recreational, so there's going to be random shit in there. There's always going to be that bingo factor, like where he's like deciding to bluff without even thinking about ranges and stuff like that. That definitely plays a role. But when they go pot on the river, you're going to see a bluffing frequency of roughly 33%, which is roughly what you'd need. I decide to call anyway because I think I might be like a sliver of value when he has like pocket queens or something like that and he doesn't 3-bet pre-flop. We still beat that. So yeah, I don't know. Let's just say that we got lucky down. As they say, you'd better be lucky than good, at least in the short run. In theory, we might need to occasionally check call here on a very connected texture. I think I'm just going to check raise always and try to get as much money in as I can as quickly as possible. On the right side here, on this texture, you could go and do a bunch of different things. Go ahead and range bet small, you lose some AV. Or you could go a bit of bigger bet and a check, and then pocket queens with the heart is mostly going to be betting. On the turn here, when I go big, he should have a leading range because he's going to have some flush draws that are going to call. Like all his flush draws are going to call, whereas I bet flush draws but also random overcards. So when he checks instantly to me, I want to be a bit more careful. And then we get a very quick bet on the river. I think I'm just going to fold here. This might seem very nitty, but he should, like I said, he should have a leading range on the turn because he just hits that run out much more than I do. As he's going to call mostly with flush draws, occasionally with the very best backdoors that princes make now straight, and I don't think he's leading there. And then I bet with a bunch of overcards, like random. Basically, I bet the flop here with Queen 5 of diamonds, sometimes like 10-5 of spades, stuff like that, and he doesn't call with those hands. So when that happens, he just has the nut advantage because he has a higher concentration of flushes. I just have a lower concentration of flush because I have random shit in my range as well, whereas his range is very condensed towards hands that connect with a 9 and an 8, and when the 7 of hearts rolls off, then he needs to lead the turn at a very high frequency, which he won't. Sorry for going a bit quick there. Here we get 3-bet, we just check, and when he doesn't lead, we get the check back more liberally, and then when he insta-bets 3/4 on the river, I just give up, I think. Here on the turn now, I think I'm just going to go ahead and bet. We'll finish off with looking at this hand to show what I mean. It's a pretty cool hand, and there's like a lot of exploits that you can use after betting larger on the flop here. Not just with air because he will overfold or whatever, but much more nuanced stuff where he needs to do specific things according to the solver and according to how ranges interact. And if your opponent is not doing that, then you get to exploit that. And 25 and up players are not going to do that, so we get to exploit that. So pocket 8s here, I'm going to call. You sometimes need to 3-bet. You sometimes need to call, and you sometimes need to fold there. You sometimes need to 4-bet. Sometimes call, sometimes fold. Here I'm going to go ahead and min raise very aggressively with a very big part of my range. He is allowed to probably range bet for half pot or pretty close to it, so it's not the most intuitive spot, but still then pocket 8s would be check raising sometimes. On the turn I'm going to check. I think he will be playing relatively honest, as in like check, ace king, ace queen, ace jack. A bit too often here. Bet some random other floats like high card hands and then a bunch of pocket pairs, and so I get to just fold because I don't think there are enough random floats in his range when he's 3-betting middle position versus early position. So you might be like, why would you check raise then? Well, getting value from ace king, ace queen, getting protection, yeah, like a bunch of different reasons basically. This is the hand. We start off on the flop here, button versus big blind, and we are on 9-8-3. We'll look at a sim in a second, see what kind of sizing we need to be using in equilibrium there. I went with 85%. Anything polar is going to be good here. And then we'll see what needs to happen from our opponent's point of view. And we'll build an AI sim as well, I think. That should be relatively cool. So here we have the solver. Wait, let's do it like this. Button versus big blind, synchronized pots. And then the board was 9 of hearts, 8 of diamonds. And let's go, and this is a simple, wait, we want big blind steep. Okay, so here you can see between 75% and 125% is reasonable as the in-position player, and your pocket queens are just predominantly going to bet. Ace is predominantly going to bet. Like, what is the stuff that we want to make indifferent? It is going to be weak pairs, 5 out pairs. So like an 8, queen 10. And if we overbet, we can see that flush draws are going to be calling, which is 6.7% of the range, and he's calling 40%, like for defending. So we can say what we can actually see. So let's say we're going for an AI solve here. Let's say, for the sake of argument, we do it like this. Yeah, so let's say for the sake of argument, we actually go with it 85% sizing. Like we said, we are going to c-bet like whatever 10-6, queen 5 type hands. Like we prefer to have, like you can see the solver, AI solver generally is a bit more pure with specific combos, but you're going to have hands with diamonds more often, hands with hearts more often, like high card hands, or with like a single heart more often than without a single heart. But there's going to be some random jack 4 of spades that just goes pure here. Queen 7 that just goes pure here, queen deuce, and our opponent doesn't really have that, right? When we bet this sizing, he's just going to fold that. He's even going to fold like jack 7, which is a gut shot, which is kind of surprising, but he's going to defend hands that just connect very well with this texture because he faces such a large bet size that he can just fold the vast majority of his hands. Let's remove all filters. So low pairs are going to be folding, like the majority of his ace high, king high hands are going to be folding, and the ones that are calling just have a very strong draw. So when we call here, we can say that a 7 of hearts is quite likely going to hit that range quite hard, and he's going to have a leading range here. It's not actually a very significant leading range, and that is because ranges are wide still. If we duplicate this and we go into solution, so let's say we do it the same thing, but we do UTG, 9 of hearts, 8 of diamonds, 3 of hearts, is that the solution? And let's say we go here with the bet 75, or yeah, bet 85, call 7 of hearts, then we should be seeing more leads here. Less leads, that's annoying. Wow, I'm surprised by that. Let me just go into actual library here so I can figure this out. Usually you get like a higher bleeding frequency if you're UTG. But maybe this is because of the fact that it's 987. I think it's because it's 987 and not like 675 or something like that. So let's see. Let's go with the overbet here, call, and we go to turn reports. And then we duplicate this. So I just want to make sure that I'm understanding this myself correctly, right? 983, check, check. Oh no, wait, check, overbet. We'll go with the overbet this time and then call. Then we can see the average leading range here. 7 it was, but it doesn't really matter. Yeah, so you can see, this is what I was referring to, tighter formation, like much more leads, wider formation, less leading going on. It's just slightly different, I suppose, for the 7. For the 7, it's a kind of not a very big difference, but you can see for all the other cards, the lower cards, you get many more leads when it's a tight formation than versus a wide formation. Okay, so for the hearts, not really though, right? Like I guess a little bit more leading. Like if you look at the jack of hearts, about let's say 44% leads. Here, jack of hearts in a wide formation, 22% leads. So it's definitely somewhat true. Like the reason is when ranges are wider, there's a whole bunch of other noise in there. When ranges are very tight, then there's usually a bigger asymmetry that happens when the board changes significantly. So in other words, imagine that you're in a 100 max no limit hold'em cash game. You are opening UTG with pocket aces and your opponent defends with jack 10 of hearts as his only combo because you're playing 100 max. Like this is an extreme example. You'd have like a leading range, a very significant leading range on a lot of cards here on the turn, and you'd go pure on a lot of other cards. So, and when you dilute those ranges with a lot more of random stuff, like some lower pairs, some high card hands that now might be calling, some other backdoor type stuff, then you'd get into a situation where the leading isn't as significant because ranges here, I choose a board first, I will go for the 7 of hearts. Ranges here consist of 100 combos versus 143 combos. If you go here to the 7 of hearts, then it's significant. The imposition player has 1.2 combos, which is kind of weird. Why does the imposition player have 1.2 combos here? Oh, it's just because there's like not a lot of overbetting. Okay, that's fair enough. Let's go with bet 75 real quick. Then on the turn to see if that plays a role as well. Go back to the 7. Okay, so I lowered the bet size now. Still want to see, is there more leading in a wider formation, a tighter formation than in a wider formation. So again, this is the wider formation. This is the tighter formation. And we can see even here, like more leading in the tighter formation. So reasonable understanding. Let's go back to the hand now. I've nerded it out a little bit, probably like my retention graph is like dropping significantly here, but like the ones that are still hanging out there, I much admire your enthusiasm for the game. Basically what we want to get an understanding for is like what happens if our opponent doesn't lead here. So he should be leading in this situation 23%. If we face a check, then we bet 50% of the times. We're going to remove these leads because we just expect our opponent to not understand that he needs to be leading here sometimes. And then we're going to try and see what would happen to our betting frequency, and we can see it goes down significantly, and pocket queens becomes a pure check. With aces and kings are betting sometimes, so it is not, this is just a bit lucky, right? I would probably have checked if I had pocket jacks as well, but you're going to check everything a lot more often, and checking pocket queens is very reasonable. And then we go for an ace on the river and see, we should be going for an overbet and even some all-in sizes, right? Try to think of why that is if you're watching this. Why would you want to go for an all-in size when it is 6x pot? Well, it is, simply put, out of position is, like if we go here to the ranges, you can see out of position has a flush advantage, a straight advantage. So he has an advantage in the very top of the range here. And so he wants to go ahead and put that range advantage to work by betting here. The in-position player, the out-position player checks, and then the in-position player checks back. He's probably going to have to check back some flushes here. Like if we go here, flushes need to check back. You're still betting the majority of your flushes, but you need to check some back, otherwise it would be even more detrimental. And I'll show you what would happen then. Spoiler alert, most 25 now racks would just bet all the flushes here. But you're betting most of the flushes, so now you're ending up on the river, and this is what the ranges would look like, right? Out of position has 14.4% flushes because he didn't lead on the turn, and now he has all of those flushes in his range still. In position is betting a bunch of those flushes on the turn, so a bunch of those flushes get removed from his range. And now you have a situation where out of position still has a reasonable amount of flushes, and he wants to capitalize on that by just going all in and just putting like a lot of your range into the blender. Like basically straights are indifferent, sets are indifferent now. And you couldn't really do anything. You could overfold here, right, if that would happen, but then the out of position player would be able to bluff always. Now, while we're nerding it out here, let's just go and remove flushes altogether. From the checking range. So we're just going to say what happens if we were to bet all our flushes on the turn. And then we can see that on the river here, what was the river? Ace of spades. You'd have like a very significant shoving, like you're shoving 21% of your range now. Anyway, going back to the hand, what have we learned? We have learned that the 7 gets led, but not to the same frequency that we thought. And it's not necessarily that in a tighter formation on this particular run out, you'd have more leads than in a wider formation. This happens on average, and on a bunch of textures you're going to have leads in a tighter formation than you would have in a wider formation, but not necessarily on this 8, 9, 7 structure. When we expect our opponent not to lead on the turn, we can exploit that by checking back more often, basically removing one betting street from his range here, and then he can't get the amount of betting volume in with his flushes that he wants to get in. And the only thing that he can then do is start shoving the river sometimes. In practice, we can just massively overfold. And like my hand is probably indifferent here. I removed some of my flushes here in my betting range, which is kind of probably not what I would be doing, but you can see queens is pure folding here. Jacks is sometimes calling though, so take it with a grain of salt. I think in practice, if you get a very quick bet here, you just want to fold. All right, so that's it for this video. If you have any questions, comments, and feedback, just drop it in the comment section down below. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I would very much appreciate that. There's a link to our Discord channel that you can join for free. And if you're playing today, good luck at the tables and talk to you guys soon. Bye.